My dear, not every story ends where it's supposed to. Some journeys never find their last stop, like that train, the one they still say you can hear, on foggy nights, drifting across the valley, though the tracks were torn out 50 years ago. They call it the train that never reached its station. It was 1954. I was a young woman then, hair curled, lipstick too red, and always 5 minutes late for everything. That evening, I stood on the old Marigold platform, waiting for the 8:40 train to St. Vincent. A cold wind rolled in, heavy with the smell of rain and coal smoke. But the train, it wasn't there yet. And yet I could hear it. The whistle, low, distant, like a sigh through a graveyard. The others on the platform heard it too. The sound of wheels, the rhythm of iron on steel. But when we looked down the track, nothing. Just fog, thick, white, endless fog. Then the clock above us, that old brass station clock, stopped. 8:39. Frozen. It never moved again. Not even once. They said it was an electrical fault. They said maybe the signal wires had frozen. But when I looked closer, the clock hands weren't just still. They were bent backward, like someone or something had tried to turn back time. And that's when I heard a voice behind me. A man's voice, deep, careful, polite. "Ma'am, you're not supposed to be here after 8:39. I turned around, and there he was, standing too close, too neat, wearing a conductor's hat that looked decades too old. His face was pale, almost silver in the station light. "Train's delayed?" I asked. He didn't smile. He just said, "Not delayed, ma'am, just repeating. It's always 8:39 here." That was the night the 8:40 to St. Vincent vanished. Every passenger, every car, even the tracks themselves, gone by sunrise. Some say it's an old ghost story. I say it's still out there, waiting for someone to finish the journey 2 decades later. When the mystery had faded into rumor, the Railway Museum in Claridge received a sealed envelope. No return address, only the words, "To the one who still listens." Inside was a small leather diary, dated 1912, the same year the train vanished. Its pages were fragile, its ink nearly erased. But one entry remained perfectly clear. "If the clock strikes 12, while the wheels still turn, we will never arrive." Curator Martha Ellison read the line again and again. She had been a child when the disaster struck, her father among the missing passengers. She decided to visit the derelict tunnel near milepost 19, where the tracks ended abruptly. The deeper she walked, the colder the air grew. Water dripped from the stone ceiling like a slow metronome. Halfway through, she noticed markings on the wall, dozens of them, carved numbers in ascending order. Each number matched a date the signal light had been seen over the decades. At the final mark, a fresh scratch glimmered faintly. Tonight's date. Her lantern dimmed. Then came a rush of wind, as though something vast had just passed through. In the darkness, she heard whispers overlapping, passengers calling roll numbers, conductors shouting destinations long erased from maps. And then silence. Martha dropped the diary, but before it hit the ground, a hand, pale and gloved, caught it. A man in an old conductor's uniform looked at her and smiled. "You shouldn't have come here, Miss Ellison. The train's schedule is eternal." When she blinked, he was gone. The diary lay closed at her feet, but now it was open to a new entry, dated that very night. It read, "One more soul has heard the whistle." Martha ran until daylight broke. That morning, townsfolk claimed they saw steam rising from the old tunnel mouth for the first time in 50 years. When dawn came, the fog still sat heavy on the valley. I woke to the sound of silence. No birds, no church bells, not even the paperboy's bicycle bell. Something in that quiet felt wrong. It was as if the whole town had forgotten to breathe. I wrapped my shawl tight and walked down to the station. But there was no station anymore, just a stretch of dirt where the tracks had been, the platform sunken, the brass clock face shattered on the ground, still showing 8:39. The whole place looked erased, like the night had taken it back. Sheriff Dunham stood there with 2 deputies, boots crunching on gravel that should have been steel. He looked up at me, pale and tired. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "you were here last night." I nodded. "Then you'd best come see this." He pointed at the ground, and there, half buried in mud, was the outline of a rail track. But it didn't end straight. It curved upward, like it was trying to climb into the air. That's when they found the first piece of metal. It was a train wheel, half melted, twisted like wax, and inside the curve of steel was a single, unburned ticket. Destination, St. Vincent, seat 12A. My seat. The sheriff asked if I'd given my ticket away. I hadn't. I'd left it right on the bench when I saw that strange conductor. And now it had come back, burned into steel. By afternoon, word spread across town. People whispered in diners and porches. Old men crossed themselves before speaking of trains. The younger ones laughed, called it superstition. But the elders, they remembered another train, one that vanished in 1912. Same line, same night, same time, 8:40 p.m. The sheriff ordered a search along the valley ridge. Men with dogs, torches, maps from a century ago. And I went too. I don't know why. Maybe because I felt connected, like it had been waiting for me. Halfway through the woods, we heard something, faint, rhythmic, like metal dragging on stone. No train should have been there. The tracks were gone. But the sound was moving, slowly, steadily, toward the ridge. We followed it until we reached the old rail bridge. It stood alone, a black skeleton over the river. And on that bridge we saw light, a lantern swinging back and forth, held by someone standing midway across. The same neat hat, the same silver face. The conductor, he lifted his hand slowly, as if to wave. And then he stepped back, off the bridge. No splash, no sound, just vanished. That night, the fog rolled back in. Every clock in town stopped again at 8:39. But this time, it didn't start again for 3 days. And when it did, there was a letter on my porch, stamped St. Vincent Station. But St. Vincent had been abandoned since 1912. It was addressed to me, postmarked 8:39 p.m., and the message inside read only 4 words: next departure, tomorrow night. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat by the lamp, holding that letter, reading those 4 words over and over again. Next departure, tomorrow night. My hands shook, but not from fear, from curiosity, and something deeper, a sense that this story wasn't done with me yet. At sunrise, I walked to the post office. The clerk, old Mr. Hardy, turned pale when he saw the envelope. "Where'd you get this?" he asked. I told him it had been left on my porch. He stared for a long while, then said, "These stamps were discontinued 40 years ago." He flipped it over. The wax seal wasn't just a stamp. It was an emblem, a small engraved train wheel, with the numbers 8 and 39 carved inside. Mr. Hardy whispered, "My father worked that line. He said the night train stopped only once after it vanished, picked up 1 passenger, and took her too." He looked up, his eyes soft with warning. "Don't go near those tracks tonight, Mrs. Whitmore." But I already knew I would. As evening came, the fog returned thicker than before. The air smelled of rain and iron. I took my shawl, a lantern, and the letter tucked into my coat pocket. I walked the old path to St. Vincent, my shoes crunching over broken stones and weeds, where the rails once gleamed silver. Each step echoed like footsteps in a memory. The station appeared through the mist, a broken roof, ivy-covered signs, and the platform buried in dust and silence. But the air, it wasn't still. It vibrated like something vast and unseen was humming beneath the earth. I raised my lantern, and there it was, the station clock, restored, its hands ticking, alive again. 8:38, 1 minute until departure. Then I heard it, that same whistle, soft, ancient, mournful. Through the fog, a faint golden glow appeared. Headlights, like twin eyes of a memory reborn. The ground trembled, rails reappearing beneath my feet, forged out of light and sound. The train emerged, silent, perfect, and shimmering, its windows showing scenes that didn't belong to this time. Inside, passengers sat motionless, faces pale, eyes open, as if waiting for something. And there he was again, the conductor, his uniform untouched by age, his hat gleaming in the lantern glow. He stepped forward and tipped it politely. "Your ticket, ma'am." I reached into my pocket, and before I could answer, the letter in my hand turned to ash. He smiled faintly. "Already aboard." I stood frozen. The whistle sounded again, long, hollow, final. he turned, and behind him, every passenger lifted their eyes, each face looking directly at me. Some looked familiar: neighbors, friends, people long dead. One of them, my husband, smiling softly, motioning toward the open door. I wanted to run, but the clock struck 8:39, and I heard the voice. It's always 8:39 here. The air grew bright, and the ground beneath me began to hum. Then, darkness, 2 decades later, when the mystery had faded into rumor, the Railway Museum in Claridge received a sealed envelope. No return address, only the words, "To the one who still listens." Inside was a small leather diary, dated 1912, the same year the train vanished. Its pages were fragile, its ink nearly erased. But one entry remained perfectly clear. If the clock strikes 12 while the wheels still turn, we will never arrive. Curator Martha Ellison read the line again and again. She had been a child when the disaster struck, her father among the missing passengers. She decided to visit the derelict tunnel near milepost 19, where the tracks ended abruptly. The deeper she walked, the colder the air grew. Water dripped from the stone ceiling like a slow metronome. Halfway through, she noticed markings on the wall, dozens of them, carved numbers in ascending order. Each number matched a date the signal light had been seen over the decades. At the final mark, a fresh scratch glimmered faintly. Tonight's date. Her lantern dimmed. Then came a rush of wind, as though something vast had just passed through. In the darkness, she heard whispers overlapping, passengers calling roll numbers, conductors shouting destinations long erased from maps. And then silence. Martha dropped the diary, but before it hit the ground, a hand, pale and gloved, caught it. A man in an old conductor's uniform looked at her and smiled. "You shouldn't have come here, Miss Ellison. The train's schedule is eternal." When she blinked, he was gone. The diary lay closed at her feet, but now it was open to a new entry, dated that very night. It read, "One more soul has heard the whistle." Martha ran until daylight broke. That morning, townsfolk claimed they saw steam rising from the old tunnel mouth for the first time in 50 years. For 47 years, the tracks beyond milepost 19 were left untouched. The officials called it an unsolved disappearance. The newspapers called it the vanishing train mystery. But the locals, they whispered, they said that on quiet winter nights, when the fog rolled low and the wind fell silent, a signal light still blinked deep in the forest where the tracks once ended. A red light, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. It was an old signal post, rusted, half buried, and long disconnected from any power source. And yet, every year, on the same night the train vanished, the light came alive again. One night, a retired railway worker named Harlan decided he'd had enough of rumors. He took his flashlight, his old lantern, and walked straight into the fog. He found the post, still pulsing red, but when he got closer, his lantern began to flicker. His wristwatch stopped, and from somewhere beyond the mist, he heard it, that familiar, steady rhythm of metal wheels on tracks. The sound grew louder, and then, through the fog, Harlan saw the impossible. The train, the same one that had vanished decades ago, moving slow, silent, every window dark, every face pressed against the glass, pale, motionless, staring straight ahead. And then it passed right through him. No wind, no impact, just cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold that clung to his soul. When the fog cleared, Harlan was found lying beside the signal post, whispering one sentence over and over. "It's not gone. It's just not done yet." After that night, the railway authorities sealed off the area. But even now, when the fog grows thick enough, the signal still shines red, waiting for something to return. After Harlan's death, the railway finally gave up trying to explain anything. The line was cut, the record sealed, and the entire route quietly erased from maps, but not from memory, because on a fog-thick dawn in 1997, a young journalist named Evelyn Grant decided to reopen the file. Her grandfather had been one of the missing passengers. She wanted answers, not stories. Evelyn traced every inch of the abandoned track until she reached where the forest swallowed the rails. And there she saw it, a single signboard, half buried in the soil, paint peeled, letters almost gone, but still readable. "Welcome to St. Mary's Station." No record of any St. Mary's Station existed. No plans, no blueprints, nothing. And yet, the ground beneath her boots vibrated faintly, like the hum of a passing train far below. She followed the tremor through the woods until the trees opened to a clearing, and there it stood, an old wooden station, untouched by time, clock frozen at 11:47 p.m. The same moment the train had disappeared 50 years ago. Benches covered in dust, ticket windows shattered, yet everything else exactly as if waiting for passengers who never arrived. Then she heard the voice, a soft, calm woman's voice, echoing through the empty hall. "Final boarding call, St. Mary's Line. One way only." Evelyn turned. There was no one there, only a faint glow seeping from the tracks outside. The train was coming again, not roaring, gliding, as if through another world. Its lights dim, its whistle low and mournful. Evelyn watched it slow to a stop, doors sliding open with a sigh. Inside sat the missing passengers, the same faces from those black and white photographs, decades unchanged. They were not dead. They were not alive. They were simply waiting. And among them, in the very first seat, sat her grandfather, smiling gently, as though he'd been expecting her. He raised his hand and whispered through the glass, "You can't fix time, darling. It fixes you." The whistle blew once more. The doors closed, and the train began to move, vanishing back into the fog. Only this time, the clock above the platform ticked forward one single second. For the first time in half a century, Evelyn dropped her recorder and whispered into the empty air. Maybe it finally reached its station. When rescuers found her the next morning, the old station was gone. Only a single ticket lay in her hand, faded, stamped with that same date from 1952, and a return time that had never come. And from that day on, every year, on that same misty night, people near the old line swear they can still hear a faint whistle, distant, aching, promising something that never quite arrives, because some journeys never really end.